It is Underwater Wednesday, so you know what that means. It is time to test baits in my 90-gallon aquarium over there, and today it is Clam's moment to shine. They have a great selection of Maki Plastics, these hand-poured, little intricate, delicate, beautiful, they're wonderful baits. Right in front of me here, we are going to be testing those baits out today. Also going to be trying a little bit different variety of jig heads. I think you're going to enjoy this. Let's get loaded. First up is the Maki. It's 1 1/4 inches, and this is a pink glow color. All right, we'll just start off with a pretty subtle presentation right now. Not moving it at all, just gentle little jigs of the rod tip. And you can see, wow, those tails on this bait are really providing a lot of action. Very wavy, very seductive is how I would describe this lure. Yeah, there's actually 5 appendages on this bait, so it's just got a ton of action. It really, those tails are kind of spread out, so it allows it to really have a lot of action. Those other tails aren't really impeding the other tails, so you get this really nice undulation. And we'll speed it up a little bit. I've got this rigged on a Clam, the Drop. It's the Tungsten Drop series, and it is glow red. You can really see how those tails really will be able to call some fish in. Super soft plastics too. That soft plastisol that they use in these Maki Plastics really allows for that undulation. You can really see that there. Soft plastic, really soft plastic hand pours allow for that kind of action right there that you see. And we'll pick it up a little faster here. You're really trying to get those fish called in, trying to get them excited. And yeah, that's a pretty great looking bait there. Lots of stuff going on. This is a bait that has a lot of action to it. So this is really a bait that's going to call fish into it, I think. All right, up next is the Matdi, M-A-T-D-I, 1.5 inches, and this is in hot pink glow. Got it rigged on the same jig head as the last bait. This is an interesting lure. It's got 4 what look like little fins on the sides. So you got 2 on each side, and they're just little fins. You can see them right there. A little bit of movement there, but most of the action is coming on those long 2 tails at the end. And we're just working it nice and subtly right now. And you can really see that action of those tails, those twin long tails. Again, this is the Matdi, Great thing about these Clam Maki Plastics is that they do add fish oil to them. So not only are they super soft, but they are adding fish oil, which will help to potentially attract fish, one would hope. But a lot of the fish attraction on this particular bait is going to be from that tail calling those fish in. Again, you can see those 4 little fin appendages off the sides, 2 on each end. So that's kind of subtle. We'll make a little bit more moderate presentation now. Great looking bait. That soft plastisol really helps to accentuate how this bait was designed with those long tails at the end. And everything just works better when you're using soft plastics. Everything, the action is just very, very lifelike. We'll increase the presentation here so it's just more erratic. You're really trying to call those fish in. Really kind of getting kind of crazy with it here. Just drop down the hole and you're getting fish called in, and this is what that looks like. All right, here is the Bloodi, B-L-O-O-D-I, and the color is white red flake. This bait is supposed to mimic a bloodworm, and it's kind of cool. It's got, you can see it there at the very end. There's a couple of maybe 3 little appendages, very, very subtle appendages at the very end of this bait, and that is supposed to mimic a bloodworm, I would presume. But this is definitely a bait that you're going to want to use if you're really trying to mimic the forage that's in the body of water that you're fishing. Got a lot of bloodworms. I imagine this is going to be a great selection for a body of water like that. And so we'll just kind of do a little bit of subtle stuff with this bait. Just kind of see how that works. Just subtly, just even quivering. And then we'll pick up the pace a little bit more. Do more of a kind of, I guess, a more modest presentation, not as crazy, until we'll do a crazier presentation here last. That tail is kind of interesting. That tail will sit up sometimes like that. See that? And that tail kind of sits up a bit. And then more aggressive. All right, this is the Wammi, W-A-M-M-I, and this is 1 1/4 inches long, and this is a glow color. All right, this is probably the most realistic of the Maki Plastics. Got a lot of appendages, insect-like appendages coming off this bait. Looks a lot like a hellgrammite. 3 little tails at the end there, you can kind of see. Short little tails, but there's some action there, a little quivering, you could see that. Quivering, kind of gives those tails in the back quite a bit of action. Subtle action. This is going to be a bait that, you know, if you're really worried about matching the hatch, this is going to be a bait that you pull out. I wouldn't necessarily use this color. If the water's real clear, I would try to use something that was more natural color. Maybe something more like a green pumpkin or a motor oil. But this kind of illustrates the action of the bait well, this color. You can see those appendages. And again, this is like a subtle kind of action here I'm imparting, but we'll make it a little bit more aggressive. And you can see how it still undulates well. It's, you know, because of that soft plastic material, that plastisol, it's really helping with that. And really gives it, that plastic's very soft, obviously, very limber, and even a bait that doesn't have a whole lot of appendages, longer appendages, you still get a lot of good action out of it. And now we'll bring the action up a little bit more aggressive, really trying to call the fish to the bait. And again, this is going to be one of those baits that you're really trying to match the hatch because it's just so realistic looking with all those legs and whatnot hanging off it. All right, this is the Jamei. This is 1 1/8 inch long, and this is a pink glow color. This bait has 5 appendages, shorter appendages off the sides, and then a long, 2 long tails out the back end. So it's got plenty of action from those tails, not as long of tails as some of the baits that we've featured previously, but this is kind of a good mixture of action and then some realism in that you have those appendages off the sides, so it looks like something that you'd see an insect in the water. And you'll notice, I'm using a lot of colors, like pink colors, colors that are going to show up really well just for demonstrative purposes. Is that the right way to say it? Demonstrative, demonstrative purposes. But I would really only use these colors, these bright pinks and whites. Really, they would be something where I'd use more in, stained water or where there's low visibility, it's dark. A lot of these colors are glow colors, so they'll glow in the dark, but they really show up well, so I thought it'd be best just to use these brighter colors so that you could see the action of each of these baits. And this is the Jamei, Jamei. And that tail, it's actually 2 tails, but I'm really not seeing that they're really separating much. They're pretty close together, so kind of acting as one right now. We'll pick up the pace a little faster, a little bit more aggressive, kind of a medium presentation. Now you can see those 2 tails a little bit better. Lots of different ways to work this bait. More aggressive now. And those 2 tails have separated. You can see that provides much more action when you can get those tails separated and be independent of one another, and it's just going to provide a little bit more action to the bait. All right, changing up a little bit to a different color, the drop tungsten jig head. This is still 16th ounce, 5mm, number 12 hook. This is a gold color jig head this time. Got it paired up with a Mino, M-I-N-O, watermelon red flake. I just thought this color of jig head looked better with this particular color of bait. And this is really going to be a lure that doesn't have a ton of action, but it's supposed to mimic a minnow. It's got a minnow profile. The body, you can probably tell there, is basically formed like a minnow body. And then it's got a spiked tail, and that tail isn't laying flat, it's on its side, so very similar to a caudal fin, tail fin of a bait fish. And so this bait is supposed to mimic bait fish. And so we'll just do something a little bit more subtle. You can see that tail it's got some action there. Not a ton of action to this bait. This is going to be something that you can dart more, so we'll work this a little bit more erratically. So this bait, you're mimicking fish, small little fish. So I'm working it a little bit more aggressively now. Boy, that gold jig head really stands out, doesn't it? And now really aggressive. All right, switching it up, going a little bit bigger now. This is the Snowdrop XL Tungsten Drop Series jig head. It's a 16th ounce, 5mm, number 8 hook, watermelon candy. This is the Jamei XL. This is the big version of the bait you saw earlier. This is 1.5 inches and the color is glow. So this is a really, really big package. And we're just gonna do a subtle presentation here for a little bit. You can really see the 5 appendages on this bait on the side. There's 5 appendages on each side of this bait. And then the 2 longer tails there. And they're not really separated. So until you really start working this bait quicker, more aggressively, those tails won't separate. They'll stay that way when you're just kind of subtly working it. So we'll pick up the pace here a little bit more erratic of a presentation. And now you see those tails separate. So they kind of, when you're working this bait more subtly, those tails, those 2 tails on the back will stay together, but more aggressive presentations, and now you see that tail separation. And this is gonna, you know, this more erratic retrieve, and you see, or I shouldn't say retrieve, presentation is gonna just, you know, help to call fish in. The fact that this is a bigger bait is gonna do that as well. So a bait like this, obviously the head is bigger, the jig head is bigger, and you can really see that jig head sparkle there. See that? And that's that stuff, it's like sugar that they're gluing onto the jig head here. And that's just the idea there, is it's just gonna bring in some more light and sparkle and maybe attract fish. But when you typically are using bigger baits like this, maybe the body of water that you're on has bigger panfish, you know, bigger crappies in it. So you're gonna wanna use, in those situations, you know, you can use bigger baits. You know, if your body water's got mega bluegills, you know, sunfish, perch, you know, that's when you can get away with a bigger bait like this. Or another example, you'd use a bigger bait, you know, it's stained water. You really want to make a lot of commotion down there to attract, you know, fish to the lure. Night fishing, that kind of thing. A little bit more aggressive now. And last but certainly not least, the Mino Head, M-I-N-O head. White red flake is the color, and using the same Snowdrop XL jig head on this one. And this bait mimics a minnow head, like a minnow head that you'd pinch off and add to a jigging spoon, something like that. And you can see those 4 appendages. It's like the guts hanging out is the idea. The 4 little tails going, plenty of action there. And this is a bigger bait. So this, again, a bigger bait you'd want to use, you know, in a body of water that you know there's some bigger fish, or you're trying to attract call fish to your lure, maybe because the water clarity isn't great, maybe just low light, could be nighttime. So that's a good reason to use a bigger bait. So this is kind of doing a little bit more of a subtle presentation here. We'll quiver it a little bit. Just kind of see, just even let dead sticking, it's good, but you can see that soft plastic, that plastisol is so soft that even hardly moving it, those tails have action. So we'll jig it a little bit more. Sometimes, you know, just those subtle actions are what trigger a fish into biting. And that Snowdrop XL, you can see that sugar that's, I know it's not sugar, but it looks like sugar on that jig head, and that's kind of kicking out some sparkles, really bringing that light in. It's a nice match here with this Mino Head. It's a little bit more aggressive. The tails they're more spaghetti-like than the previous tails that you've seen. Just more like a noodle. You know, like those are like, reminds me of noodles, I guess. Quite a different action to it. A little bit more aggressive. And now we're really going to be more aggressive, really trying to call the fish up. I really like the way this bait looks with a more aggressive presentation. So this is going to be something that can really call fish to it. Just the fact that it's bigger, but you can see with those tails that it's really making a commotion. And there you have it, Clams Maki Plastics. They've got a lot of really great looking hand poured baits. Maybe you saw something that really tripped your trigger. Also be sure to check out their jig heads, their tungsten jig heads. I'm impressed with that stuff as well. That's it. Until next Wednesday when I'll see you. I'm really digging these Underwater Wednesdays. Hope you guys are too. See you then.